Hello, I'm Jonathan Samuels, in for Neil Patterson on this episode of the Sky News Daily, where we're going to be talking about this.
We don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care.
Just who is the hard-right, combative Trump ally shouting at my colleague, US correspondent Martha Kelner? We'll find out after this. Now, we all know that the Trump administration is becoming increasingly hostile to what it describes as the mainstream media. For a long time, President Trump has suggested that lies are being spread by journalists who work for these organisations. And things got even more tense recently when AP, that's the Associated Press, was barred from the press pool. The press pool are those journalists who cover Trump's engagements. Well, they had refused to call the Gulf of Mexico by its new name, the Gulf of America. So in other words, they were banned from asking the questions that Donald Trump doesn't like. And encounters like this are getting more common.
Have you seen the new information revealed by The Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that
No,
group?
the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant, and I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
What country are you
from the UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about American...
No, do you care? Okay, you're
Do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care about
and
your
your Vice
fake
President
news.
and your Defence Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asking.
I'm not answering her question
All right, I'll
because
ask
I
you.
don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can answer.
Do you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration?
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorists, cartel, child sex trafficking, human
One
trafficking.
of Trump's close allies, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman for Georgia, having a go at my colleague Martha Kelner. Now, you might have seen it online or in your feeds. It even played on one of the biggest chat shows in the United States, the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Well, Martha sent me this voice note telling me what she made of all the fuss.
Looking forward to listening to your profile of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is one of the most famous faces of the Make America Great Again movement. She is famously combative, so I was expecting, when I saw her in the corridors of the Capitol building this week, to have a fairly testy encounter, but nothing could have quite prepared me for being told to go back to my own country by an elected representative of the United States inside the corridors of power as tourists were walking past, aghast. And this clip's now incredibly gone viral, you know, not just in the US and in the UK, but around the world. Our colleague Neville Lazarus, who is the India correspondent, was saying he's been on TV over there. And I think it's because it's struck a chord, not just because of the aggressive language that Taylor Greene is employing, but also it's this idea that she is simply reading from that MAGA playbook and their crisis management strategy, which seems to be deny, deflect and attack. I think a lot of Americans feel embarrassed. They're saying, you know, she doesn't represent us. But then there is a good portion of people, I've got a lot of them in my comments on Twitter and Instagram, saying that, you know, I'm talking lefty nonsense, and just evidence yet again of how divided this country is and how siloed people's views are here.
Clearly a divisive figure then, but what more should we know about MTG, as she's often known? Tia Mitchell is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Washington bureau chief, and she covers Georgia. She's been following Marjorie Taylor Greene's career since she first got into politics and knows a thing or two about how she operates.
She is what we call an ultra-conservative hard right, a big supporter of President Donald Trump, of his Make America Great Again kind of brand of Republican conservatism. I like to describe her thinkings as white Christian nationalists. She wants to have the government reflect a strict adherence to what she thinks are conservative values. So she's against gay marriage. She's against rights for transgender people. She wants America to not spend its money helping foreign countries. She wants to limit immigration. She wants to make sure that gun rights are expanded. These are all things that kind of fall under what we call just very conservative politics.
And she's become incredibly well known in the last couple of years or so. How has she risen to prominence?
Well, she rose to prominence, quite frankly, by being elected to Congress. So before then, she was pretty well known in the conservative media sphere. She was popular on conservative YouTube channels, on certain social media networks like X and Telegram. But when she ran for Congress and won, she became more of a national figure, one of the most popular Republicans in Congress, but also very reviled by Democrats, which also increased her kind of notoriety because Democrats began to learn about her and really did not like what they heard. And so, she's championed on the right and reviled on the left.
And you talked about how she is a huge supporter of Donald Trump. What's their relationship like?
A very close relationship. They speak on the phone. At one point, she was considered for his cabinet. She ultimately said she felt she could serve the president better by remaining in Congress to get his agenda pushed in Congress. And now she's the chair of the DOGE subcommittee, which is working hand in hand with the Trump administration and Elon Musk to cut government spending and cut the size of the federal government. So she talks about having a direct line to Donald Trump and has for quite some time.
Tell me a bit about her personality outside of politics. She's got a business background, hasn't she?
Yeah, she had a business background. Her father owned a construction company, and she and her then husband kind of helped take it over. But personality-wise, she's very kind of a MAGA mom, if you will. So she can be friendly and personable. She's a petite blonde woman. She can be bubbly at times, especially talking about things that she's excited about, like personal fitness and personal wellness, like Republicans and Donald Trump. She can be pretty effusive. But when you push her buttons, she is not afraid to go after you. She's not afraid to confront her political opponents, whether that be Democrats, whether that be gun control activists, even teenage gun control activists, whether that be journalists who she believes are, playing gotcha or asking her questions she doesn't want to answer.
Have you ever pushed her buttons?
I have. We talk pretty regularly. I asked her about Christian nationalism because she was using an interpretation of nationalism, kind of whitewashing what nationalism means and saying, I love my nation. So if that makes me a nationalist, so be it. And I was like, well, that's not really the definition of nationalism. Nationalism means that, you're kind of isolationist and your nation is kind of, you don't want to interact in the world. So I used an analogy that she didn't really like. I did get kind of the same energy that your coworker received. I know it well. It's a little bit performative as well. The fact that I was asking her that question in front of other journalists on the steps of Congress where a lot of people were around kind of gave her a platform. So, I've been interacting with her for several years now. I don't take it personal. I know that it just kind of comes with the territory. And, both she and I come back the next day and it can be fine.
And interesting you talk about the interaction she had with my colleague Martha Kelner, because the questions that Martha were asking were perfectly reasonable questions, weren't they? But the response was quite a lashing out. Do you think part of that, as you say, performance is about intimidating journalists?
I don't think she cares whether the journalists are intimidated or not.
Right.
I think she cares that the people watching on conservative social media who will see the clips later will cheer her on. And I think she wants that. I think she also knows that Democrats will watch the clip later and further revile her, which kind of plays into her persona as someone who's loved on the right and hated on the left. So I think for her, the interaction just kind of reinforces the persona that she has been cultivating. And that's why she's willing to have these types of interactions with journalists. So when she tells a reporter from Europe to go back to your country, that again reinforces that Christian nationalism that is baked into her political branding.
Tell us about some of her biggest controversies, because there have been quite a few, haven't there?
Yeah, I mean, more recently, it's been sparring with fellow Democrats on transgender rights, actually sparring with fellow Republicans on some of the kind of decisions that have been made in Congress when it comes to leadership and foreign spending. Earlier in her career, she had been accused of making anti-Semitic remarks. She's been accused of making anti-Muslim remarks. She's been accused of spreading conspiracy theories around 9/11 that she later admitted weren't true. There have been so many controversies over the years. She said that mass shootings like Sandy Hook, like the Parkland school shooting, were either false flags or were staged. She also, we don't talk about it as much anymore, but back when Marjorie Taylor Greene was first elected, she was openly affiliated with the QAnon conspiracy theory that talked about there being a deep state of bad actors in the federal government that Donald Trump was going to save. So a lot of her conspiracy theories, a lot of the misinformation and bad information that she shared kind of can be wrapped up in that QAnon conspiracy theory.
She's perhaps rode back on some of those controversies of late. Do you think those attempts to moderate her image have worked?
No, but I think what they have done is helped address some concerns that her fellow Republicans had. I think there are a lot of Republicans who see how popular she is, see how much money she raises, and they wish that it didn't require her being so conservative, so combative, and they think it's further eroded their party's brand. But they also know she's strongly aligned with Donald Trump. They know she is one of the most prominent Republicans, and so they don't challenge her openly, even if they don't like everything she says. Very similar to what they say about Donald Trump. They'll say, well, I don't like everything Marjorie Taylor Greene says, but she's on our side. I agree with her on the policy. So, sometimes I wish she wouldn't say this thing she says, but, we're still together. We're still aligned. We're still going to push forward to implement Donald Trump's agenda.
Also interesting to talk a little bit about her partner as well, because he went viral, didn't he, after the bust-up in the Oval Office when he asked President Zelensky why he wasn't wearing a suit.
Yeah, that's her boyfriend. He runs his own conservative network on YouTube. And now that they're a couple, he continues to give her a platform. But I think by being aligned with her, that's also helped him build his platform.
You've mentioned my colleague Martha's interaction with her. Something that stood out for me in that interview was when she refused to answer any more questions, she turned to the American journalists, as she called them, in the room. And one of them said, yeah, I'm American. I want to ask what she was asking. Do you sometimes think that maybe American journalists are almost a bit afraid to really push because they know the fiery response they'll get?
No, I don't think that at all. I think we know, and quite frankly, Marjorie Taylor Greene knows that at the end of the day, we're going to ask the questions that we think are most important to our listeners and viewers and readers. And we know we can't force her to answer the question. So that's where her prerogative comes in. But it's our duty to ask, and we will continue to do that.
What's next for her, do you think?
I think what's next for her, she's again chair of this DOJ subcommittee. She's been holding hearings, including last week. She's going to continue to do that. I think she's going to continue to be one of the prominent Republicans in Congress backing Donald Trump, pushing for his agenda. Sometimes that's going to have her sparring with journalists. Sometimes that's going to have her sparring with Democrats. And quite frankly, sometimes that has her sparring with fellow Republicans when she doesn't think that they're closely enough aligning with Trump or working hard enough to push Trump's agenda. She's been quite critical of House Speaker Mike Johnson at times. So she's going to always be on the side of Trump and the Trump brand of conservatism. And I think that's not going to change.
Do you think we could one day see her as the first female president?
I don't know. She's going to run for president. There's a lot of rumors back in Georgia, where she's from and where I report, that she might run for Senate or for governor. So perhaps a statewide office. I think her brand of fiery conservatism, in addition to her being a woman, in addition to her not being Donald Trump, who's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime type of political figure with his celebrity, I think it would make it harder for her to become president, but we don't know which direction American politics will go in the next few years. But I think it is more feasible that she could try to run for statewide office in Georgia. She hasn't announced, but again, we do have a Senate seat and a governor's race coming up in 2026.
Tia Mitchell from Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's it for this episode of the Sky News Daily. And remember, you can let us know what you think of the podcast by filling in the survey. There's a link in the podcast description. Thanks for listening. See you again soon.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m. wherever you get your podcasts.